As we listen, discuss, and share our discourse today, I would like to pose some questions before my talk. What are we going to do as a community now that we have heard all the speakers speak on the issues of racism? Look around the places you live and ask, what is lacking in your community? Is it a lack of diversity within our educational system? Is it employment and salary disparities, the healthcare system, or the penal system and the treatment of non-white individuals? How do we erase the psychological effects that racism has played on our psyche over time? Today, I speak to you not only as a librarian or the person that had a vision to create an oral history collection at the Bethlehem Area Public Library, but I am also a public humanitarian in which the people and the places where I live are important to me. I ask what is lacking in one's community because for me, what I saw missing from the library was the lack of history about the Black experience of Bethlehem, along with the Native Americans, the Lenape tribe. I hope one day we can build a local collection on this tribe. Native Americans and enslaved Africans lived, ate, worshiped, and were buried alongside the European Moravians. Before 1866, enslaved Blacks kept journals written in German, hence why some of their stories are unknown to most lay people. However, the most notable and most written about Black Moravians were Andrew and Magdalene the Moor. We do not know what happened to the descendants of the Black Moravians. More recently, I found out about Maria Beaumont and her sister Betsy. They both attended the Moravian School for Girls on August 28, 1787, as per an admission book. She later became a teacher. However, she was taunted by her students and had a psychological breakdown. Even though we intend to investigate this part of history eventually, we do not want what happened to their buried history, that is the Moravians, the Black Moravians, to become the same narrative of the African Americans in Bethlehem. The Black experience of Bethlehem became more of a focus when Moravian college students came into the library to research African Americans in Bethlehem. As a librarian, I felt hopeless and intelligent because I couldn't find enough information for them. And therefore I vowed to myself that I must not be placed in such a precarious situation again. Therefore, the birth of an idea that came about serendipitously caused me to embed myself in a community that I had not known about. To get to know them, I conducted pre-interviews, visited their churches and social functions. And before I continue on, what I'm going to do is to share some of their stories with you. One second. Let me know that you can see it and hear it, please.
I was born at St. Luke's Hospital here in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And grandfather located here in 1932, and my grandmother somewhere in that same time period. My grandfather came from Fredericksburg, North Carolina, and my grandmother came from Virginia. I grew up in the projects, and that being said, I lived around mostly Blacks, We did have Portuguese, people from Poland, people from Czechoslovakia, uh, and Italians. And a lot of them had jobs in the Bethlehem Steel as well. And they had housing for them in the projects because it was close to the Bethlehem Steel, and that is where they lived. But growing up, I got to taste foods from different nationalities. Everybody there treated everybody the same way because we were all in the same struggle. We were all in the projects together. So there was really no prejudice there. But if you stepped outside of that, I found when you went to school, that's where you picked it up because um, during high school, we got bused there. Uh, that was in, I believe, in 73 or 74. They started busing us to, instead of going to Liberty High School, we went to Freedom. And when we got there, we found that there might have been 2 blacks in the whole school, but they were blacks that lived near Freedom High School, which was, we considered that rich. And for the people who got bused there, it was uncomfortable because most of the kids were not familiar with being around that many black people at one time. A lot of the kids on our bus that took the bus with us from the projects found it so discomforting that a lot of them just stopped going to school. And
my husband was, well, we met at college. I was going to Howard, he was going to George Washington University, and he was majoring in law. And we met on Howard's campus, and he was very active in the activities at the college. And it was funny because we met on well, I was leaving campus, he was coming onto campus, and he was asking for directions. And we told him where to go to the event that he was coming to. And he says, well, could I have your phone number? And I said, no, I don't give my phone number out. So he says, I'd like to call you. So got the phone number. And we started dating, and he was interested in what I was doing, which mostly was music. And we got married about a year later. And he was also a substitute teacher in the DC public school system. And I had started working in the DC public school system also. So he was at one school that I was at, and teachers got very excited about it because he's very handsome. And they got all excited about it, but the kids loved him to death. And he started working with the government, and we moved from there because the job that he was working at had expired, actually. So instead of just looking for another employment there, we moved up here because it was closer to my parents. And he was the first black lawyer that was hired by PP&L at the time. And we found that we were part of a whole movement of young college and technical people moving into the area at the time. And we started, he was working there and I started working at the church, and I was unable to find another teaching job up here. So we just carried on as best we could. And we ended up finding out he was the first black attorney to be accepted by to go on to the Lehigh County Bar. And which was a shock to us because when we came here, there seemed to be a number of black people here and some black lawyers also, but they were just coming into the area for a while, and they either go back to Northampton County, but we were in Lehigh County, but they would go back to Philadelphia or wherever. But he just ended up opening up his own law office here. So became a self-employed lawyer, and I ended up helping him.
Winston Chukwemeka Balozi, Balozie.
And your first name?
WI, 1987.
Okay, and Winston, where were you born?
I was born in Shreveport, Louisiana.
Okay, I'm going to stop right there. I stopped sharing my screen, am I correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. All right, so let me continue with my talk. And so I just wanted to share that with you so you can get a sense of some of the issues that were facing African Americans here in Bethlehem and still continue to face African Americans in Bethlehem. And we will get into that during the discussion period. And so sometimes I just want to tell you, sometimes when I'm going through the politics and difficulties of work at the library, I have to ask myself, why was I placed in this space and time? The answer is always the same. I had not come to the public library. Had I not come to the public library, I may not have gotten to know about the rich history of the Black experience, just like some of those stories that you heard about busing and the educational system and the discrimination with Mrs. Hammond's husband. Um, because of this project, and again, and my experience as a Black woman living in Bethlehem, I see the importance of becoming involved in the community I live in. Therefore, the time has come for us to change the narrative and become involved in the places we live, the places we call home. The time has come for us to rethink the way things are done. The time has come for us to refurbish bridges that we have built. And I'm always saying, build new bridges, but we shouldn't build new bridges. What we need to do is to refurbish them because these bridges already have structures. The bridges and the walls that the bridges, I'm sorry, the bridges and the walls that has created separation and divisive tendencies. For far too long, we remain silent. We believe that if it doesn't affect our immediate family, then it's not our fight. If we continue in this vein, we will all suffer like a pandemic or a natural disaster. It doesn't, for example, natural disasters doesn't look at race, religion, or creed. Racism is a cancerous sore that festers and eats away at our minds, bodies, and souls. We must fight to overcome this plaguing us for centuries because our children were not born with discriminatory tendencies towards another human being. They were taught. The time has come for us to say enough is enough. Arnold Toby, a British economic historian, noted that some 26 civilizations have risen upon the face of the earth. Almost all of them have descended into the junk heap of destruction. The decline and fall were not caused by external invasion, but by internal decay. They failed to respond creatively to the challenge to banish racism. So future historians will have to say that a great civilization died because it lacked the soul and commitment to make justice a reality for all men. Therefore, let us commit to dismantling and eradicate the race issue if we do not want Toby's prediction to come through. Let us aim to live in a more symbiotic community in which each of our citizens live in unison despite our cultural differences. And I want to end with this part of the talk with two poems. With the project, I had to do a reflective essay. And while writing this reflective essay, I also composed two poems. And these poems came out of me because I was, I felt, I felt the passion of this project. I felt that it needed to be done. I felt that the voices that are not usually heard is heard now, and that we must continue. It is time for us to change that narrative. Whereas we are always listening to one particular type of story, and so the poem that I wrote is titled Unheard Voices, and it was written in 2020, February 6th. I saw you, but you couldn't hear me. Like a child, I looked into your eyes with deep anticipation. I wanted to hear your sweet voices about once upon a time. Why can't I hear you, even though I see you? Are you a figment of my imagination? Or are you afraid to speak? Speak aloud so I can hear you. Look out yonder beyond this space. Look, they await. It is not the first time that someone came. There were others before me, and you did not share. Do not let your stories go unheard. Tell them about the journeys you made from far and near. Tell them about the town you decided to call home. Tell them about the struggles and triumphs, your love and loss, your births and rebirths. Tell them about how deep your roots are in the village that's now called your home. Speak up, speak up. I can't hear you. Come closer and whisper in my ear. I will write your stories and stitch them down into the fabric of our beings. I will cement them into the sidewalks of time. I will memorize them and share them with our children. Come, come. I have a story to share about the unheard voices. Once upon a time, in a village in Bethlehem, PA, there lived a close-knit African-American community, and their stories go like this. And you've heard some of the stories. And for the final poem that I wrote is called The Drums. Do you hear them? The drums. Their voices are the beating of the drums. They are beating in unison, the drums. They are telling stories. They're playing loud and strong. Hey, you, listen, do you hear? Their stories are the beating of the drums. Their unheard voices now booming like the drums. Thank you so much. Not, I, so I had an idea of the people that I wanted to interview. So with any project, it can change. So even though I said that, I had a list of people and these are the people that I want to interview, it didn't necessarily happen that way. So I had to actually go with people that wanted to do it, that people, when I set up an interview and I set up a time and place, I know that they're going to be there. And so again, remember I said what I did, I went into the churches, and that's how I got to know Robin Stanley. She was actually introduced to me by Mrs. Esther Lee. And so having visited the church that she attends, I got to know her. And she became part of my subject. And also how I got to interview others as well. There's a young lady by the name of Sharon King. Her mother is Vivian Butts, and her mother was the first African-American woman police officer. And she found out about my project in the morning call, and she reached out to me. And we developed a relationship, and she began to put me in touch with different people. And so that's how I also got to meet new people. So, and they were the ones who said, who made a commitment to come in and do the interviews. Again, I had to build that relationship. And this is why I say, when it comes to communities and the places where we live, it's extremely important. And it doesn't matter. Right now, we're talking about, this is Black History Month. Our topic has been racial issues. It doesn't matter whether it's my project or what you are trying to do at the church. We all have to get involved. And when there is a minority of people that are not being heard, then it's up to us. It's up to us to take that initiative and do something about it. I know the Eagle Seagull Museum had partnered with the NAACP in Eastern, and they had done not the extent to what I did. They did mostly displays of photographs and so forth, but they didn't do the oral history part of it. Um, when the newspaper article came out in the morning call, the reporter got in touch with me to find out if there was a project in Allentown, and I reached out to the grant committee, and they said no, no one is actually doing this in Allentown. And again, I will keep going back to that again. You have to, if you're not invested, or if, because again, this took a lot of time and effort, even though it was completed in a little over a year. So I got the grant in 2019, and I did my final presentation for Black History Month, actually the end of Black History Month, which was February 28, 2020, before the pandemic hit. I did my last presentation at NCC. And so again, you have to be committed to whatever that that you have a passion for, whatever your focus is. So my focus was to make sure that this project come to fruition, because of the simple fact that I didn't want, whether it is college students or a layperson or a researcher, if they came into the library now, at least I have something that I can direct them to. And so that was important. And that is so important, that trust factor. That trust factor is important. And this is why I did, when I got the names of the people that I wanted to interview, um, I did pre-interviews so that I can get to know them. And I also, like again, I also visit, I went to 100th birthday of a lady, her name is Marguerite Davis, and she turned 100. And there were, when I walked into to the room, despite the fact that this lady lived in Allentown, people from within the Black community came out to support her. And I met, and then, it's like, then I saw that, I experienced too, that close-knit family, that close-knit community that I learned about while doing this project. And no matter where they live, even if it's Allentown or Easton or Bethlehem, if there is something significant, something that is important, again, this lady is turned 100 years old. They came out and they supported her. You see the simple fact also that she was also part of the Wyoming Lodge here in Bethlehem. There's a Wyoming that, they're no longer located here in Bethlehem. They moved to Allentown, but they were here for a very, very long time. And so she was part of that. And so again, that community center and centered concept, that ideology is so important, is so important. Just like, again, and I will keep, I will keep reiterating it because it is important, because again, of what you are trying to accomplish as the church community. Right now, the church is your community. And so therefore, you see that racism is an issue within Bethlehem, and maybe other people from other places that are listening, you see that that's an issue within your community. And that's why you're here. You're most likely looking for solutions. You're most likely looking to be educated, and you're most likely wanting to have, it's time for us to create an action plan. It's time for us to do something, because it's been happening for so long. And the time has come for us to say, like, again, I said, enough is enough. And anyone can take this blueprint and go with it. We can create a blueprint here in Bethlehem. We could create something that, that other communities um, would like to use or might use. And so, let us begin. Let us start, sitting down and creating that blueprint. We don't necessarily have to recreate anything, because we know what the issues are. And they were, you know, I know, many of us, we talk about Martin Luther King. I always like to mention, where Martin Luther King's book, Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community? And so, Martin Luther King, he wanted to start a poor people's campaign. But that even goes, it didn't even start with King. It also started with the Black Panther movement. And because what people did was extract the negative from the Black Panther movement. And they did not look at the fact that they wanted to create a healthcare system, or they wanted to create better educational opportunities for their kids, or they wanted to give their kids breakfast in the morning. They look at none of those things. And so what we need to do is that we need to look at the blueprints that are already created and extract from that good and go from there. We don't need to start from the beginning. Everything is already laid out for us. I always like to mention this book by Stephen Poole, and it's a book titled Rethink. And in this book, he was talking about, he wrote about innovation and ideas, and how there is nothing new under the sun. You all know that biblical term. There is nothing new under the sun, nothing. And so it's already there for us. It's just that we need to go in now and extract and then put it all together. With technology is not something new. It's just that it's improved upon. So that's what we need to do. We need to improve upon these issues that are plaguing our community. Where does the strength come from? I guess love of community and love, I look at it too, because I think about the next generation. You see, it's not about me. you know, um, I have lived a good life, and I had my child, my husband and I, we had our child when we were much older in life. And so, it's I think maybe he too is that push to say, and then interacting with his friends and so forth. The fact that we have to leave a better community for our children. We don't want them to have to, you know, keep going over this over and over and over again. You know, education, jobs, um, the police system, the penal system. We don't want that to keep happening. And this is why I say that we need to work in unison as opposed to working in a divided fashion. And even if we have our different organizations, there are times where we might need to come together and say, you know, this is what we're doing, and sharing information with each other, and not always trying to compete with each other. That's another thing. We're constantly trying to compete, and everybody wants to be the leader, and everybody wants to be the boss, but we're all leaders in our own way. I am a lead. I'm a leader in my own way. If I can't handle something, like for example, if I'm going through Shalomo, Rabbi Levy, I will go to him and ask him for help if something, because I know he's good at a particular issue. And so he is a leader in his own way, and I'm a leader, and it goes like that. And so we need to stop this infighting that is causing this breakdown, and it's causing this disconnect. We need to come together in unison. And you mentioned Miss Estely, and I see her as the mother of our community, and she has been through her struggles. And this is why I don't call her Esther. If I'm speaking to you, I call her if I'm speaking to you as a group, I would say Miss Esther Lee, but I will call her Aunt Esther. Because of this project, I would say that I gained two aunts because of this project. There's this Miss Vivian Hungerford, and I call her Aunt Vivian, and for some reason she still calls me Miss Levy, or she calls me or she calls me love, or whatever, or sweetheart, or whatever. But nonetheless, the whole point of it all is that she is the mother of the community, and therefore whether we agree or disagree with her, we must respect that. We respect the work that she has done. It's just like a child. It's just like a child. A child doesn't always agree with their mothers, or children do not always agree with their mothers. And so what happens is that, oh, mommy, blah, 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 and this and that. And it's the same thing. So we might not always agree with her, but so she's looking out for the best interests. She's the one that's been, I mean, she's 87 years old. She doesn't have to continue this fight. She doesn't. She doesn't have to do it at all, but she's doing it. And so therefore we have to respect that. And she, I respect her as, as the person she is, because she did not sit back. She did not sit back. She continues to fight. I just want to say, also during my research, I did find out that there were Blacks. The reason why the AME, and Ms. Cecily, you can correct me if I'm wrong. The reason why the AME was created was because of the simple fact that the Blacks were worshiping in that church. However, they had to go to the balcony, and that's where they had to worship, and they didn't like that. And so that's when they went, they built their church which is currently on Pawnee Street, and they started their own congregation. And again, this is what race and racism has done to us. It's divided us in our worship, and now we are trying to fix it and see if there we can get it more integrated. But it's going to take a lot of hard work, because it they it's been happening for a very long time. And if you get a chance, look at PBS and the Black churches, and you will see even more about why is it that the Black churches exist, and it exists because it's community centered. And I just want to share a little off point thing. When I was in library school, um, the professor had asked us to look at a book of religions. We had to look at encyclopedias dealing with religions. And then we had to come back to the classroom and share our thoughts. And someone came across the Black Jews, and they made a comment saying that they might not be Black, they might not be Jews, because they're singing, and they're clapping and blah 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 and this and that, and they're playing instruments and things like that. And so when they said that, I had to actually write something. I actually had to write a statement to counteract that. And so I had to tell them that if they go to the Tanakh, Psalms, I believe 96, it says, praise God with a drum, a cymbal, praise him, praise him, praise him. And that means there is joy. And so for them to say, and again, you can't blame people for thinking that way, because this is how we were taught from generation to generation. Our minds are brainwashed to say that because they are Black, because they're worshiping a certain way, disregarding the fact that we read the Torah in Hebrew, or we read the Psalms in Hebrew, and we follow everything that a service, a Jewish service should be followed, or disregarding all of that. The only thing that they focus in on is the fact that we were playing drums, or we were playing this, and we was clapping. And again, that's that mentality. And the idea of this divisiveness, and to think that they could not have think that it had the reason why we worship like that is because of our culture. That is who we are. It's just like the French Jews might put in their own flavor, or even with their foods and things like that, into their worship. The Africans will do the same thing. Black Americans will do the same thing. And so it's all psychological. So we have to get away from this psychological this concept of how one should behave. One should behave when it comes to religion. Because what religion also does, it divides us as a people, as human beings. So I just wanted to share that story with you, that, even if somebody, we are Black and we're Jewish, we bring within our community, we play the drums, we play the guitar, we play the flute. But that doesn't mean that we're less Jewish because we do these things. And again, you can't blame them for thinking about that, because you have to look at the history of racism and how it all started. And so it has seeped into our lives continuously. And I'm always using the tree as an example. It's rooted into our psyche. And so we need to get away from that. But it's going to take time. It's really going to take time. It's going to take time and effort. But it can be done, because think of the next generation. And so you ask, why do I have this passion? It's because I think of the next generation. Because I won't always be around. Just like Miss Esther Lee, she won't always be around. So she's always fighting for the next generation. That's what we all have to do. And I've always emphasized that, people have been reaching out to me about the projects and so forth and how it all started. And I said, it's because I embedded myself in the community when I came. I embedded myself in the community. It doesn't matter where I work. When I worked at the Free Library of Philadelphia, I became involved in their community. I worked at Northampton Community College. I became involved in the students' community. And so you always have to find a way to embed yourself, but while you're doing that, but to make a difference and building those relationships. And another important thing is to, even though you've left those community, to continue those relationships, because there might come a point in time where you're going to need that person again. And so you keep that conversation going. And so that is exactly what I've done. You build, you foster them, and you create strong bonds. I just want to share, because you mentioned the media, I just want to share a quote that I came across by Matt Maxwell, and this is concerning the media. He said that the overall and culminative effect of the media is to heighten our sensitivity to reality. Rather than breaking the chains of ignorance, political domination, and illusion in our platonic cave, something insidiously, similarly, yet different is going on. Instead of actually leaving the darkness of the cave and going into the sunlight, we merely watch an image of ourselves doing this. We fantasize about doing it and think it's the same.
Very true.
So yes, the media, it has, and again, the media and literature and books, it has an impact on how, we think and how racism started. I just got through, you guys should read the history, stamped from the beginning, the history of racist ideas in America. And you will learn about different characters like William Lloyd Garrison, Cotton Mather, Angela Davis, W.E.B. Du Bois. But what I took away from that book is the psychology of it all and how we were taught from the beginning of time. That's why it's called Stamped from the Beginning. They have stamped into our psyche that racism is, must exist by, and what they have done is to say that one group is ignorant, one group is unattractive, and the list goes on and on. And so they have stamped that into all of us, not just whites. I mean, every last one of us. It's been stamped into our psyche, and we can't get rid of it. We're trying. Mind you, we are trying, but it's difficult, and it's going to be, and so we have to be conscious. We have to be constantly conscious of how we think and the things that we do. Because this idea of race and racism was used as a ploy to divide and conquer us. Because we weren't always like this. And if by any chance that they see that, we're figuring things out for ourselves, they try to bring in something negative to disrupt the whole process. But we have to remain vigilant. We have to remain vigilant. My goodness, I got a lot of great response because PBS did a piece on the project, the morning call. American Library Association interviewed me and did a piece. Because of that, Pennsylvania Archives reached out to me, and they invited me, and they sent me the list of people that actually registered. Over 144 people registered, and people registered from AME College, Austin, Texas, Georgia. I'm just going outside, including Pennsylvania. So it's been a really great positive response that we have been getting for this project. And I just want to highlight that, I didn't do this project on my own. I did have help. And I was dragging Professor Levy, Rabbi Levy, with me when I was doing those interviews. I was taking him to different places. One weekend, it was a long weekend, one of those 3-day weekends, and there was a young lady coming up from Georgia, and I wanted her to be interviewed along with Vivian Hungerford, because Vivian Hungerford didn't want to, come to my home alone. So she waited until her niece came up. And so I said, oh, they're coming over on Sunday. He said, Sunday, it's a weekend, blah, blah, blah. I said, but I really want this story. Every story was important. He had to go with me to Allentown to interview Clyde Bosket. And the reason why I wanted him, I said, oh, we gotta go because his story is important. Every story was important. And his connection was, Bethlehem Steel, and he had 3 barbershops and he had sweet shops. And so it was important that we get his story. So no, we've been having a great, people, it's been spreading, and people have been hearing about the project and have been reaching out to me to share the experience. It's important that we teach our children local history as well. And that piece is missing. Our children do not know the local history. people would not even know about the African Moravians. You have to either be a scholar, a professor, or maybe someone that's doing a research for a dissertation or something. But a regular layperson would not have known about the African Moravians, the Black Moravians, and we still don't know what happened to their descendants. And so that's a piece of the puzzle that we aim to unravel. So it is so important because Bethlehem, again, the Native Americans, the Moravians came and Native Americans were here. And then they brought over Africans. They got quite a few of them from the Caribbean. I just want to mention that. And so this lady, Marie Brumont, she was from St. Kitts, but her father was the white man who was a planter, and her mother, they're not quite sure. She was either enslaved or she was a free Black woman. And so they don't know much about that side of it.
Yeah.
And so it's important that we teach local history as well. So, this has been mulling around in my mind. And as I was preparing for this, and I'm also involved with the Moravian Church as well. And they probably have a couple of people here on the call. And, yesterday we had a meeting, and again, I'm preparing for this project. I had the meeting yesterday, and sometimes, as you talk, it's like you're talking things out because, it hasn't been formulated in your mind as yet. And so what I was saying is that we can probably create pods, and some of this idea as well I got from when I did my stamp from the beginning, when I had my courageous conversations. And so we know that there are issues here in Bethlehem. And again, I'm speaking about Bethlehem because this is where I live. And if you're not living in Bethlehem, think about where you live. And so we know that there are issues concerning the educational system. And so or there might be issues concerning policies and so forth. And so let's each create these circles of individuals. And if you're interested in finding out, delving into that and making a change within that particular pod, that particular circle, then you join that circle. So now you have all these circles, but now within those circles, there are threads connecting each one of those circles. So now you have this, if you're in the circle of policies, so now you create that circle and you have a group of people just looking at the policies here in Bethlehem. Why is it that, Mrs. Esterly, that when she ran, several times for, for a seat, why is it that, she didn't win? And so maybe there's some underlying policies that's there, or maybe housing. So let's look at policies. I don't know how to, I know how to read, I know how to, comprehend it. So, but there might be someone who is very knowledgeable about looking at policies and deciphering it and going through it line by line. And so let's say we want to look at the policy of the city. We look at those policies and see if it's in line with diversity, if it's in line with what we are trying to accomplish. And so again, you have these circles, you take the circle that you're interested in. We even spoke about education. So I told you about STAMP from the beginning and learning about the education of racism and understanding how it all started and understanding the fact that we need to get away from that. And how do we get away? So if you're interested in the education of racism, educating yourself about different cultures, then you go into that circle. And again, there's this thread connecting all of us, and then we come back together in unison as one. That's what I am thinking about when we want to, because again, we have to take things in small chunks, in small pieces, because we become too overwhelmed when we have to look at this big thing. And so because we tend to become overwhelmed, what happens is that we get pushed back and we get tired and fatigued. And so therefore, it's best to take things into small chunks and figuring things out that way. And then coming together as, because we can't handle everything. It's just too much. Just like how I couldn't do an oral history of the Lehigh Valley, because that would have been too much. So that's what we had to, that's what we probably need to do, is to create these circles, these small circles, and handling situation and just dealing with one issue, and then coming, so this circle is dealing with this, another circle is dealing with this, and so forth. And then we teach each other about the things that we have learned. And so then perhaps we can vibe off of each other and get ideas from each other. That's what I am thinking. Thank you so much.